Okay, so this is lesson number 5. We're going to continue on with the lesson track that we were making from last time. So just to remind you where we were at, I'm going to get rid of the filtered loop for a second, just so we got the basic bass and drum beat going. So I'll keep talking about building a track within an 8-bar loop, get as many elements as possible, and then expand out from there with sort of a subtractive method. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about breakdowns, and we're going to build a mock breakdown to help you transition in, because you'll get to a position where you've made an 8-bar, a 16-bar loop, and you'll just keep looping it round and round and round. You'll be sat in your room for the next 4 fucking hours listening to the same loop and not having any inspiration of what to add next or where to go. So building a breakdown and having the transition between the main part of the track going into the breakdown and coming out of the breakdown back into the main part of the track again can inspire you to put something else in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a mini breakdown over 16 bars. So I'm simply just going to copy and paste this across so we can see which part will be a breakdown. Now, this might not be the final breakdown, but it'll be something to start with. So we'll get cracking with that. But before we carry on, the purpose, I guess, of making these videos is to give you lot, or you newbies more so to speak, confidence in and music production not being too daunting for you, because the program's in depth. You've got many producers in the world, and you'll watch all these mad videos on YouTube. It all seems complex, and you might think, fuck, how am I ever going to get to that position? So if you watch the last video, you'll see the absolute piss take track where I did a 12-channel track that I've put out for release. Now, I'm not saying that tune's going to be a banger. I'm not saying that that's going to do really well on Beatport or Tracksource or anywhere, because you need to manage your own expectations a little bit when you start making music. The truth about the music industry, just like anything really, once money touches it, it's fucked. Like YouTube. Let's look at YouTube, Go back to YouTube back into 2004, the early days where it was just a lawless ground, wild west of fucking any old video, and it was full of authentic material. You move that forward to 2023 and half the shit on there is fake. It's sort of clickbait, and it's all about getting views and being monetized. In the music industry, that's changed massively over the years, over the decades, should I say. So to think that you made a banging track, or you made a track that you think's good, and that's all that matters, really. Don't go out there seeking approval of anybody else. Fuck them. Don't worry about it. If all that matters is your opinion of your shit, so if you're happy with it, cool, release it. Now, if that doesn't bang, who cares? Make another one. You got the power of creativity, so make it for authentic reasons. Don't make it to appease to who you think it should appease to. Make it because it grooved for you at that point. Now you'll probably go back and listen to all your old tracks and think they're shit. You don't like to listen to them anymore. When you're making tunes, you listen to the same shit over and over again, and by the time you finish, you're probably sick of the tune. But the truth is, in the industry, unless you're lucky to get signed to a massive label, I'm not going to mention any names, your tune will be released and it will just disappear into the archives. That's the reality, because unless you're putting in feature requests for Beatport, Tracksource, you've got a good promo package, you've got a good marketing team behind you, they're not going to feature your tune, because there's big labels that are at the top, and no matter what shit they release, that shit gets featured. People buy it. It sells because of the brand power of certain labels. I've heard some top artists release some absolute dog shit, right? And people are hyped about it. It's a bit like DJs as well, really. You can get some superstar DJs that you may rate, you may not rate. Are they actually doing anything that's specifically different? DJ EJ, bad boy, and people with skills, Jeremy Ellis, people like that who are playing stuff, Kerry Chandler who can actually play an instrument. But let's take just the standard DJ who just mixes from one tune to another. What did There's only so many spaces at the top. That's the truth. And unless you land lucky, don't stress yourself into thinking you're going to make a banger and then this banger just disappears into the archive. Just manage your expectations around that, but have the confidence to know that, look, move on. Once you've learned how to make tunes, you can always make another one. There's always a new track around the corner. So just be inspired by that. And don't make it for false purposes. Make it for the fact that you want to create something and know that your opinion is all that matters. Because there's someone else out there that won't like your tune. There's someone else out there that will. So don't go out there seeking approval. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself all stressed out and shit. I mean, I saw something really fucking funny the other day on Facebook. I took a screenshot of it, actually. Let me pull it up. This is about DJing. So remember, not all producers can DJ and not all DJs can produce. Some people call themselves DJs and producers. And they can. Let me just find this. It's quite a funny statement. Where is it gone? Oh, this says, and this was probably written by somebody who's got a heightened sense of self-importance. So if there's only so many spaces at the top, what's encouraged amongst this industry is for you guys not to be let in the circle, right? You know, this says DJing is an inherent talent, really. From fucking where? Like passed down from your DNA, is it? It's a skill that has been developed over time. Fair enough. That's quite true. That's practice. That talent has to first exist before you can begin to improve it. Like, come the fuck on. Like anything, right? If you practice, you'll get it. You practice a language, you'll get it. You practice how to drive, you'll get it. Imagine somebody saying driving is an inherent talent. Fucking hell, they need to get over themselves. Where's the rest of it? Seems like too many people equate DJing with the ability to just operate gear. It's the furthest thing from the truth. Well, actually, no. What's the other parts of it? Fucking tune selection. Playing, mystically reading the crowd and playing the right fucking song at the right time. No, you're taking a tune, you beat matching it, you mix it into the next tune. Half the time, these motherfuckers are just twisting knobs that don't even need to be twisting. And they've got this massive heightened sense of self-importance in this big fucking club that they don't want you to be a part of. Well, fuck them. Do your own thing and just make tunes. Because if we look at the history of DJing, let's be honest, the DJ was just a little sweaty, spotted, dickhead teenager in the corner that would kind of play the music while everybody else was having a good time. Now, most DJs aren't musicians. Most DJs don't even play their own tunes. And to kind of top that whole thing off, do you know who the first DJ in the UK was? Jimmy Savile. So there you go, right? My point with that is don't stress about the social image and trying to become famous, because the marketplace has changed and it's saturated with different people, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you might have Paris Hilton playing a pre-made fucking mix and just trying to look good behind the decks, and if that sells tickets, that sells tickets. But don't compare yourself to things that you're not comparable to. Just make fucking tunes, and the purpose of these videos are to just give you sort of shortcuts and try and inspire you in ways just to keep creating. You're not going to create a banger on the first one. You might create a banger that you like for a week and then think, you know what, that's fucking shit now. But these little tips here of how I put tunes together have helped me just develop stuff. So when you're starting with a simple loop there of 8 bars with a repetitive bass line, repetitive drum beat, and you don't know what to add next or where to go from there, try and create a breakdown, and that will force you to either add, take away, or bring new elements in. So, get some of the coconut water down me first. What I've done is I've been to our old pal YouTube to find a little snippet, a vocal, something stupid, to put in this breakdown. Now, the breakdown section here is going to be this much. So we can color it green so we know what we're working with. And the idea of this bit is to transition in here, have something going on here, and transition out with a anticipation and a build up to loop back round into the drop. So if you remember the filtered loop we made last time, let's just go back. You may not play that to start with. So you could literally do it like this, right? If you want to audition it and make it longer, you can play it. Then click it. So you can add elements that way by just turning it on and off if you really want to get the feel of it. Anyway, let's go over to YouTube first and see what we're working with. Ah, here we go.
What is that?
Yeah, what do you think, Puff? It's a fucking tool.
No, it's not. It's a fucking rolling pin. Who are you, Fanny Craddock? What are you gonna do with that? You gonna bake me a cake? You gonna sing me a song, watch me blow out me fucking candles? I come here for a fucking shootout, right? A proper shootout with some proper men. Like Colonel Custer and Geronimo. Have you ever heard of them? No. Because you were too busy in your penny baking fucking fairy cakes, weren't you? Which, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. They're fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get up. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
Now that bit there, a shootout, it's a fucking shootout. That would be quite cool just before the drop and some anticipation. So I've shifted that over, I've downloaded it, and it's here. So I'm just going to drag this into Ableton. Remember, we're working with timing. So we need a shootout is a fucking shootout just at the end. So the best way to do that is to zoom in, double click the file, use this slider to find out where that is.
This lot can
Let's just turn the music off and mute it a second.
nonsense to a man. They're fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get up. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
Cool, there. So we're going to shorten that down. We're going to drag this to here. And then we're going to drag this out. Now, you're not going to have it playing here. So what's this little bit? You're not going to have it playing over where the tune starts building. And you can, it's up to you. There's no rules, but let's listen.
Craddock, what are you gonna do with that? You gonna bake me a cake? You gonna sing me a song, watch me blow out me fucking candles? I come here for a fucking shoot.
So maybe this, starting here, I come here for a fucking shootout. That bit will be the bit to start. So
Craddock, what are you gonna do with that? You gonna bake me a cake? You gonna sing me a song, watch me blow out me fucking candles?
let's zoom in. Let's just pull this across. You can zoom in even more, pull it across. Let's say we're going to start here.
I come here for a fucking shoot.
That's going to be the loop length that we're going to use for it to drop in. So the end bit's really important. When you're looking at a break, we want it to kind of say this.
A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
And then have enough time for the anticipation to build and then drop back in. So if you look here, these last two bars, it will be good if this dropped just before those last two bars. So you can just move it along and have a look.
Shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
You can have a snare roll, bang, and it can drop in. Or we can drag it to there and have it roll like
shootout!
Bang. That can be changed as we start to develop the break. So with this coming in, what we can do is a reverse reverb on it. I've shown you that before. So you just take the first hit.
I come here,
We'll take that. Or I. Let's just take the I. So we'll take this, we'll hold control, we'll drag it across and we'll drop to separate it. We'll move it out of the way. So I will pull it, say, here. We will create an audio track, which move myself out of the way. Audio track. We're going to go to the extension in and we're going to select track 13. Remember, that's whatever audio is coming out of here is going to come into this track. We're going to come to this. We're going to get a reverb. We're going to double click that onto this track. We're going to make it fully wet. Extend the delay time. Have a listen. All it's building up. Let's move it over a little bit more so we've got a little bit more space. Let's come over to here, arm this bit, and then click this and click record. We've got a nice little reverbed bit there. We'll come back to this channel. We'll take the reverb off. Delete. We'll delete this. We'll come back down here. We'll double. Before we do that, remember, make sure that it fits. So it's from bar to bar. The reason I say that is it just makes it easier for you to drag it. So if we consolidate this clip, double click, reverse this. If you remember from last time, at the end, we probably want it hitting about here. I'd say about there, before it starts to get quiet. So we're going to overlap that. So we're going to come down here, it's already overlapped. And we're probably going to pull this back just a little bit. And then you have to audition and see. So let's just cut this out to there and see how this sounds. That's quiet. Let me just get the pencil off. That's quite quiet there. So maybe move it over a little bit more so that the peak kind of hits with the loudness of the vocal. Let's just see how that sounds. So if you highlight the two, solo the two.
I come here for a fucking shootout, right? A proper shootout with some proper...
Cool. So we've got something in there which is going to distract the... It's just different, right? So it's different in terms of the track. Then we come to the track. So the breakdown and the building of the breakdown is entirely up to you. You can literally just whack an auto filter on it with all the drums and everything included so people know that it's completely different. We could introduce this filter loop that we've put in. So it's all trial and error. So if you want, we can drag the filter loop there so it starts playing. We can come over to the master channel. We can take the auto filter. Don't turn it on like that. Come over to your pencil and turn it on the automation lane. So you see it says device on. So we can turn that on there. And we'll go for half of the breakdown first. Now you don't want the full breakdown to be exactly the same. So on half of the breakdown, we can just have it filtered. And then we're going to start taking stuff out and then building it back up. So we'll put a snare roll in there and we'll put some risers and some crashes and stuff. So let's just listen to this and see how this bit sounds. It'd be helpful if I did the whole track.
I come here for a fucking shoot.
Now, it doesn't sound right, does it? Because ideally, if this vocal was perfect, it would start there and it would end just in time. But we've got no control over that. We can warp it, but it will sound completely different and slow. So we're going to leave that where it is. But to transition into this, we need to create something that's going to let the audience or the listener know that it's hit upon the break. Let's first look at the volumes of these tracks because they were way too loud. So we'll turn this down.
I come here for a fucking shoot.
Maybe
I come here for a fucking shootout, right?
that'll do for now. And at the same time, we'll turn this reverse reverb down a bit.
I come here. I come here for...
Cool. So what you want on this bit, the start of the break, is like a crash, a hit, something that's going to just break up the difference between there and there. If that kicks in, listen to that. If the kick kicked in there, if we move the whole thing across, you'll see what I mean. We just Control Z and drag it all over together.
I come here for a fucking shootout, right? A proper shootout with some proper men. Like Colonel Custer, Geronimo. Have you ever heard of them? No. Because you were too busy in your penny baking fucking fairy tales, weren't you? Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man.
Obviously, I've left that on. But we're going to reduce it there. But the point was, see how that transitioned in? But we're not going to do that because we want the end to drop where he starts ranting on about fucking shooter. So anyway, we've introduced this little chopped filtered loop that we did, and now we're going to come over here and we're going to start reducing things. So it's trial and error. Let's get rid of the kick. You could keep the bass going for a little bit. Maybe we'll take it out there. And some of the percussion sounds, maybe we'll leave in this bit. Let's take out, what's this? Should name a track for this. Yeah, we can take that out. Let's see how this sounds.
Fucking fairy tales, weren't you? No, because you were too busy in your penny baking fucking fairy tales, weren't you? Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. They're fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking...
So you see I'm just reducing stuff. So, and here as well, where he goes, a fucking shootout. We'll make sure there's nothing there, and we'll do, from here, we'll put in a snare roll so you can hear the anticipation building up, and then we're going to automate that snare roll to filter up, and then we're just going to add some elements like rises and crashes and stuff and see if it loops around quite nicely into that, and then we'll put like a little riser here as well. But let's just have a quick listen at this bit.
Penny baking fucking fairy tales, wouldn't you? Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. They're fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right?
Apologies about that. The Zoom recording cut off, so I'm not sure where you got to, but we were at the section here where we were talking about we're going to do a snare roll up here and some crashes and shit like that. Let's have a quick listen.
Fucking fairy tales, wouldn't you? Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. They're fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
And we might not have left enough time there for a snare roll, but if not, we'll just move this across. However, you need to start thinking about this, about the anticipation and the build-up. So to do a snare roll, that's quite simple. So let's find our snare. You can add one, you can add a different one. We can do a clap. So that clap's already there. We can take it out if we want. Come over to here. We just turn on the old push, because I'm not going to drag a arpeggiator on there at the minute. But if you haven't got push, refer to my first video, which was about drum beats, and on there you'll see how to do the old snare roll. So we're just going to swing it a little bit. So let's press play.
Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. They're fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
That's cool. That's good enough for me.
I come here.
It is. It's recorded what we've done.
Fucking fairy tales, Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense.
That will do for a second. Now we'll filter this in a minute. Let's just turn that off. We're going to look for some kind of crash or rise or something. It's good to have some samples for this. You can make them yourself. It's just long. It's just easier to use sounds that are already there. Now, if you've got no sample packs, I really recommend Splice. Splice is fucking sick for this type of stuff. So you can sign up to Splice, pay like a cheap monthly fee, and you can get as many different samples as you want. So you can just go on there, search crash, and just drag it straight into here, and then you can build a library through Splice. So because I've already got samples, I'm just going to come over to the samples folder. I'm going to search, say, rise, for example. Actually, we'll do a crash first. So let's have a little quick look. Vengeance Essential House. It is important what elements you choose, because some won't tonally fit. So it's a good idea to play your tune and audition them. That sounds okay. We'll drag that in. We'll turn the volume down. Just move myself out of the way. We'll turn this volume down because it's going to come in too high. And then we'll drop another one. Now here, where it says I've come for a fucking shootout, you could remove something there if you wanted to. We could remove this.
I come here for a fucking shootout.
And we'll put another crash, so on another one. Just randomly clicking stuff. You put it on a different channel.
I'm here for a fucking shootout.
You could take the crash if you want to. You can duplicate it and double click it, reverse, and have like a slide into that. You could put that here. We've already got this building up, but you could have that. Will sound, so let's just...
I come here for a fucking shootout, right?
Didn't really like it. We'll put that there, then let's see how this sounds.
I come here for a fucking shootout, right?
Not working too well for me at the minute. You've got things like down sweeps, which are like long crashes. They could, I mean, this might sound shit, but let's see.
I'm here for a fucking shootout.
You can add a delay on that and delay it out, and we can cover effects later. So this isn't a full breakdown, by the way. This is, and what I'm trying to say to you is get a brief idea of a breakdown, which will inspire you to add new elements, and you're going to loop it round. So you'll end up with like an 8-bar loop or a 16-bar loop with a 16-bar breakdown, and you'll loop between the two. And when you can add more elements and keep fattening up this section, and then it becomes really easy then to start laying out your track. Now you're probably going to change a lot of the shit afterwards, but we're on about being creative and trying to think of ways to inspire new ideas to come through. So we're going to use these crappy little elements for now. I don't want you to sit through watching me pick crash after crash, rise after rise. So we're just going to use these ones. So an important point will be here, where it changes again. We could add a rise here on the end. Let's just hear how that sounds.
Shootout. I come here for a fucking shootout, right? A proper shootout with some proper men. Like Colonel Custer, Geronimo. Have you ever heard of them? No. Because you were too busy in your penny baking fucking food. Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. Fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
On this bit here, where it goes, a shootout, when it first starts, I think that really we need to cut this clap here. The roll.
Fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking
and we'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of everything there, so it's just his vocal.
fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
This bit's just to roll into back into the track. You need lots of elements, lots of effect elements here. So we're going to look for, say, a down sweep. See if we've got any of them. We'll start it right. Quite down. Let's have a look in here. Vengeance Deep, House Effects, Down Lifter. They're not all called the same thing. So you can find a long one. Let's see if that works. We'll drag it in on a new channel. Might have to turn this down as well because it'll sound quite loud. So maybe we'll put that here. Just switch it over and turn the volume down.
Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. Fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
We will look for a riser as well. So put rising. You can do this with reverb, so you can start reverbing the whole track. You can add some effects on there. I'll show you a really cool effect, actually. It's called Fade to Grey. I'll stick it on the master and it will affect everything, but For this one, the purpose of this is I've dragged the vocal in. We want the vocal to play, so we don't really want to affect that. But I'll just show you as an example. Let's just find a quick riser. Let's see. Fuck it, we'll wipe that in.
Proper men, like Colonel Custer, Geronimo. Have you ever heard of them? No. Because you were too busy in your penny baking fucking food. Wait, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man. Yeah,
again,
go fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shooter.
And you build in that loop. So let me just show you the fade to grey a second before we move on to this snare roll and make that just a little bit more interesting. So you could, you could have the bass pumping. At this point, what you do with it is up to you. So like, don't feel like I'm showing you an exemplary fucking example of a breakdown. We're just getting a brief idea of a breakdown before, because the purpose is for it to transition between the two. So you can keep listening to it round and round. And it saves you just being in that repetitive motion. What was I just about to do? Well, I fucking forgot. There we go. Fade to grey. So if you go to your master channel and you go to audio effects, I'm sure you can download all sorts of cool plugins that do this type of shit as well. But this one is called, it's under performance and DJ. It's just a knob. So fade to grey. If you take this and you drag this onto your master channel, once it loads, this knob here will affect the whole channel because I put it on the master. And remember your automation, you can click it to automate it. So you can click that, you can click that, you can rise it up and have it drop off if you want, but we're not going to do that. I'm just going to show you what this knob does.
Get out, go fuck.
So
a proper shootout with some proper men, like Colonel Custer, Geronimo. Have you ever heard of them? No. Because you were too busy in your penny baking fucking food. Wait, this lot of fucking nonsense to a man, fucking nonsense. You have your fucking right. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. Shootout, right, is a fucking shooter.
So you could add something like that on there. You can just automate that up and it will just change the whole dynamic of the tune, chop it up a little bit. You can add a reverb on your master channel. You can add a reverb on any of the drums. You can add any effects on the drums, and you want to just make it rise and build. So I'm just going to delete that for 1 second. I'm going to turn our attention to the snare roll, which is really common in house music at the moment. It's not a snare roll, it's a clap roll. So we need to put something on the clap. Really, we should have an EQ on it here anyway, as a standard. So when we get to the mix down session, I'll show you in a bit more depth. I'm just going to take this quickly and get rid of the low end. That would be, say, for example, your mix down EQ. You can then add another EQ, which you can automate. You can add a filter, for example, as well. So on this one, what we could do is remove the low end again. We can go to a bell. So you see this bell here? What that does is it gives it a little nudge, because if I swap that for this one, it'll chop everything off, look. So have a little bell. We can start the bell here, for example. We can turn the Q up, which makes it a bit sharper. And then turn this off, come onto this channel. Use your pencil to turn it on. So it's only going to be on during this bit. You can turn it off there. We can then come over to our frequency and we can take this and automate this upwards. And what that's going to do is going to move this bell across and give the idea that it's getting higher. So have a listen. See what I mean? You can then add an auto filter on as well, do the same. So the auto filter can move. So you can start the auto filter maybe low. Good thing is to just try and listen to where the sound just kicks in. And maybe you'll start it there. You'll come here. We'll turn this off. We'll click this on. Just for this period, we'll take the frequency. We'll click this off, and we'll automate a line up for the filter to open up. we'll take it all the way to the top. So have a listen now. We'll have a crash there, and then it'll kick into that and then drop back into the beat. So let's just put a little crash there where this ends. I think we've already got one. No, we haven't. I'm going to take this crash here. I'm going to stick it there. It's building this anticipation. So at this point, you could introduce something new. So if you wanted to introduce, I don't know, what was I doing here? I added a funky organ from the Ableton pack. So it was an instrument somewhere. Search funky organ. I've put in a couple of notes. What's this? Let's have a listen. Sounds horrible. It's really flat. There's nothing on it. You'd normally reverb that. But let's say, for example, you wanted to put this in the second half. You can introduce an instrument here. So, and that instrument could carry through to your next bit. Or, which would be here, that would be the next bit. But as I mentioned before, build all your things here, because you can turn stuff off and turn it on, because you're going to create a loop. Or we could use this as a lever to introduce this bit into there. So you could have this whole section running all the way through, maybe filtering down here. So this filtered loop, you could filter it even more. It's already got these effects on it. Remember, you can drag multiple, so you don't have to have just one. We can add an auto filter back on it. And we can filter it away. But you know it was there, and then it can drop back in when the main beat drops. That might sound okay, might sound shit, it depends. So but for now, let's just take this off. Let's just take all of this off. And let's just try and drop the tune. So it's going to build up, it's going to say that. There's going to be a little bit of a snare roll, and then it's going to drop back in. And it's a good idea to use the same crashes, or whatever crash this was. Put one there. So it drops back into the track. Common practice, stick an EQ on it and get rid of the low end. So when it comes to EQing, and I'll show you this in the EQ lesson, a good rule of thumb for EQ is to not remove too much of the sound. When you'll see some of the lessons on there, they'll get really finicky and they'll start dipping out. You know, they'll select like this number 3, they'll turn this right up and they'll pull out tiny little transients and stuff. You don't have to worry about that just yet. You are in danger of using your EQ, of taking too much of the sonic range of the actual sound away. So a good little rule would be to click a low pass filter, play the sound. I mean, we know with a crash, we don't need all this low end in there. It's just going to sound fucked when the kick drops in and your mix is going to be shit. But you can start to pull it up and listen until it changes. So it starts to dramatically change there. So get it to a point where it just starts to change and then just roll it back a little bit. So say about there, for example. Doesn't quite work. I'd probably choose a different crash, but it is just for the purposes of this video. So let's just play that and see how it sounds. We're going to audition it. And that's all you're doing, just constantly auditioning things and then waiting for the drop. And then from the drop, you'll add something else. So you could then take this vocal and then, you know, take one hit from it. So you...
A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
So you could take shootout and then drop shoot, take shootout and drop that there.
Shootout.
You could drop that there, pop a delay on it.
Shootout.
Sounds stupid now, but it's down to you when it comes to the creativity of that. But let's listen.
I come here for a fucking shootout, right? A proper shootout with some proper men. Like Colonel Custer, Geronimo. Have you ever heard of them? No. Because you were too busy in your penny baking fucking fairy tales. Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to around it, fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout!
Too many crashes going on. We didn't need this one there, for example. The clap there, I don't think that was quite loud enough. Let's have a look at the velocity. We can turn the velocity of these just to make it a bit more. Let me move that over. Let me leave that one off.
I come here for a fucking shootout, right? A proper shootout.
That sounds pretty shit. We'll take that off.
Like Colonel Custer, Geronimo. You ever heard of him? No. Because you were too busy in your penny making fucking fairy tales. Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to around. It's fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
I don't think that this bit ends quite in the right place. I think it needs to end just a little bit earlier. So just before where this kicks in, I think it should maybe end there.
A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
And that means you could make this clap here, this roll, if we just record it back in. Let's go again. Let's just start from here. Clicked on the wrong bit. In a second. Start from here. Wait for this to move out of the way.
Right, it's a fucking shootout.
Maybe that will work. It's trial and error, you know. Can't expect to get it right first. If you did have the bass rolling all the way through, so if we duplicate the bass, what you can do is make the bass even higher. So that's not the bass. Let me just find the bass a second. I think this was the bass.
Rich, this lot of fucking nonsense to around.
So although the bass that's a perk. What a fucking brick. This is the bass. You could extend the bass out. And although we've got an auto filter on the master, you can then stick an auto filter on the bass again and make that higher. So the melody continues. So if you listen to my last track, when I did the track dissection, you'll see that the bongo drum pattern is what kind of transitions from one part to the other. So with this bass now, I've just turned an auto filter on. We're going to come in here. We're going to automate this frequency to be higher. So let's just click that, and we're going to send it fucking right up. Let's see where it goes. Let's see how it sounds. I'm going to turn it off, on and off, and turn it on here. Let's see what happens.
Get out your fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gang.
Too much. It completely removes the bass sound. If I remember, I'm only operating here with the bass sound. So let's take this, turn it back down.
You fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
We can cut this bit off, for example.
You fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
You can also come over to your master track and you can turn the volume down a little bit. Let's mess with this fade to grey and see how this works. So we're going to turn the fade to grey on, and we're just going to do it until he goes a fucking shootout, which is here. Let's just see what happens with that. Let's take this bass off. I wasn't really feeling it. Trial and error, man.
Fucking nonsense to around. It's fucking nonsense. Get out your fucking way.
Helpful if we turned it on as well. So let's go back to our master channel. Press this. So it turns it. You'll see here when I press it, it turns the whole track on. You don't want to do that and then start cutting it down. So just turn it off. The only reason you're pressing that is so this changes. Click this. We're going to turn it on for this section where it's activated.
Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. You fucking way. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
We moved this over, so we'd have to move that over as well. But I'm just going to move that back again. to the position it was in and see how we.
Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
Take this bass out.
I come here for a fucking shootout, right? A proper shootout with some proper men. Like Colonel Custer, Geronimo. Have you ever heard of them? No.
Turning that
You were
down
too
with
busy
the reverse.
making
No.
fucking fairies.
You could use that here.
This lot of fucking nonsense to around it, fucking nonsense. You have your fucking right. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
Let's say you wanted to bring a new element in here. What did we have? We had this funky organ. Let's say you found some pattern. You could write a melody. Let's just see if we can fuck about.
Fucking fairies. This lot of fucking nonsense to around it, fucking nonsense. You have your fucking right. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
I don't know. I'm just fucking. It takes a while. You know, sometimes you can jam and get the exact right thing. Sometimes you'll just do it. Be prepared to have it sounding like shit for ages. And now, once you've got this basic, very basic breakdown, you know that's the breakdown. So when you start adding or taking away elements, you can, like we said before, where we're almost introducing this sound, you could introduce it there and have it filter out. So
this lot of fucking nonsense to around it, fucking nonsense.
put it up there.
You have your fucking right. Go on, get out. Go on, fuck off. Call yourself a fucking gangster. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
I'll turn that up a bit. We'd EQ it.
I come here for a fucking
The reason it sounds like shit is because we haven't EQ'd everything. But again, that's down in the mix downs. But this is just an idea for your layout. That's pretty much it for today, to be honest. There's no real rules on what to do with the breakdown, but you just got a transition into it where elements come off, and then you've got whatever part you're adding in, a build up. And then this end bit here is really important, how it transition in. I'm not really happy with that. You can create your own little roll or any sort of anticipation before it drops back in. You can even have something, let's say you're going to start this element there. You could take all of this out and just have this bit on the end to say, hey, this is coming in. And let's just hear that a second.
A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout.
So yeah, cool.